Welcome back everyone. This is going to be the first Star Wars breakdown on the channel. It seems fitting for it to be the Ahsoka trailer since this is my most anticipated Star Wars project. If you didn't know already, Ahsoka is my favorite Star Wars character. If you're brand new to the channel, I do plan on covering the show once it airs, so if you want to stay up to date on my thoughts, make sure to subscribe. So the teaser kicks off with Ahsoka walking into this sort of ruin-like structure, which I think is an ancient Jedi temple. And then shortly after, she cuts a hole in the center and makes her way down, and I thought that was a pretty cool scene. It reminded me of that scene in Clone Wars Season 7 where she did the exact same maneuver to escape the clones that were attempting to kill her during Order 66. Now, to our knowledge, at least to my knowledge, the only places where a World Between Worlds-esque location is located is within a Jedi temple. And I believe that when Ahsoka jumps down, she's in a similar location, like an entrance for the World Between Worlds. As you can see, like the different patterns and the lines on the walls is very reminiscent of the portals when we see Ezra and Rebels venturing through that area in that abyss. So I think this whole sequence is her coming to an ancient Jedi temple. I think she's searching for the World Between Worlds. It was actually rumored that we would be traveling through the World Between Worlds, seeing different outcomes. I'm not sure the source of the article, but I remember reading that Ahsoka is going to see a timeline where she fought Anakin on Mustafar. I mean, that sounds pretty cool. We won't really know until we see the show, but assuming this is true, it makes sense that this location that she's in is a Jedi temple with a possible gateway to enter the World Between Worlds. I think that would be pretty cool, but we'll have to wait and see until the show comes out. We then get a quick glimpse of Sabine in live action, played by Natasha Liu Bordizzo. And one thing to notice in this shot, Sabine's hair is actually long. The last time that we saw her, she had short hair before she put on her helmet and ventured off with Ahsoka, which I will get to in a second. So in my interpretation, I think that this scene takes place before she meets Ahsoka and they venture off to see Ezra. It's giving me the impression that she's been at that home, in Ezra's home throughout the duration of the original trilogy. And then when you get to that post Return of the Jedi time period is when Ahsoka comes to pick her up so that they can go find Ezra and see what's going on in the galaxy with Thrawn and his forces. That's the impression that I get based on this simple yet obvious visual cue with, her hair being long and everything. But it's pretty cool seeing Sabine in live action. I think she was one of the best characters in Rebels and just Star Wars animation as a whole. So it's always a treat to see a good character in animation be translated to live action authentically. We then see Ahsoka fighting the HK droids that belong to Elizabeth Morgan. That was like the whole point, that she would play a significant role in the Ahsoka series, at least the role of an antagonist. We saw these droids back in Mandalorian Season 2 when we first saw her, just before her and Ahsoka fought. She's one of Thrawn's supporters who's been assisting in his return from the uncharted territories, and she's intended to be basically a villain for Ahsoka. She's in possession of Thrawn's HK droids from his 7th fleet, which, bear his insignia. The two shots we get of the dark side users speaking in the trailer, especially this young girl with the lightsaber, I don't think these are Sith or Inquisitors, because by this point in time, the Inquisitors are all gone. I think that these two are dark Jedi that survived Order 66 and, fell to the dark side. I think that Thrawn may reach out to them and use their services for this story when he's, battling against Ahsoka and the others. If he's fighting Ahsoka, he's going to need a Force sensitive on his side, someone that could also wield a lightsaber to, even out the playing field. We get another cool shot of Sabine and Ahsoka. Now, since Sabine has her long hair, I, again, do think that this is before the scene that we saw in Rebels, the epilogue where she says it's time to bring Ezra home and, she ventures off with Ahsoka. So I think that this show is going to jump around in the timeline before Return of the Jedi and after Return of the Jedi. It's going to essentially fill in some of those gaps and add some context to scenes that we didn't really get. Ahsoka says that things have changed and that she's hearing whispers of Thrawn's return, and we get a cool shot of Mon Mothma with what appears to be other senators of the New Republic. Now, I know this is a nitpick, but I just can't help myself because I'm very detail oriented in the continuity sense. I think it's weird that Mon Mothma in the timeline is supposed to look like the one from Return of the Jedi who looks like a slightly older woman, yet here she is back to her young self. So did she like take some reverse aging medicine, some back to pills? I don't know, I just think it's funny seeing her go from young to old to then young again within the timeline. We get a cool shot of Thrawn, you know, with his blue skin for the very first time in live action for real, which was, you know, pretty cool to see. It's always surreal seeing the animated characters appear in live action. It's like a very surreal, cool feeling. When Ahsoka says that she's heard whispers of Thrawn's return and that he's going to become the heir to the Empire, this is basically confirmation of a theory that many of us had for years now, that the Mandalorian verse, the shows that Dave Filoni is a part of and Jon Favreau, was going to lead up into a version of the heir to the Empire story with the various spin-offs, like, you know, the Ahsoka show, Book of Boba Fett, the Mandalorian. Now, personally for me, I don't really prefer this. I think that heir to the Empire is the story of Luke Skywalker, Han, and Leia. And while I do like Ahsoka a lot, I mean, she is my favorite character, I don't think she should be the one leading this charge in this version of the story. I know it's not the same as Legends, but I think that certain core elements should be kept. You know, when people think of heir to the Empire, they think of Luke, Han, and Leia versus Thrawn and stuff, you know. So unless Luke, Han, and Leia happen to be in the story, which I doubt, I don't know how I feel about that. The whole feel of this trailer pits Ahsoka as a wandering samurai, just like the vibe that we got from her debuted episode in Mandalorian Season 2. So it looks like that this show is going to continue that trend, which I think it fits really well given Ahsoka's character. She's sort of like a wandering ronin, a samurai in a sense. So I think that that fits very well with the character by this point in the timeline. Now this part I found really interesting. So in the shot of Ray Stevens' character confronting Ahsoka and igniting his lightsaber, and then, you know, they fight it out, if you pay attention in the background, you see sort of like these energy beams lighting up in the background. It looks very similar to the one on Tython when Grogu was reaching out to the Force in search of a Jedi, of which, you know, Luke Skywalker called him. So judging by the background, I think that this is somehow, some way connected to the World Between Worlds. If you look at the structure, it's very similar to the ruins of the Jedi Temple that we saw Ahsoka in the beginning of the trailer. So maybe this Dark Jedi is trying to access the World Between Worlds. Maybe Thrawn sent him, and Ahsoka is trying to stop him, because obviously the consequences of a Dark Jedi accessing such a place would be very, very devastating. So this is what I get when I see this scene. We get a cool shot of the what appears to be the Dark Jedi Padawan to Ray Stevens' character fighting Ahsoka on her ship by shooting it. So I think that this character is a Padawan, because if you look in the beginning of the trailer when she's in the hallway, you can actually notice a Padawan braid. I saw that like a few times after I watched the trailer, so I think that she was a Jedi Padawan and converted to the dark side. We get a shot of Ezra Bridger in live action for the very first time via this hologram. Now, his role in the story is unknown, obviously. I think that when we do see him, he may be imprisoned, maybe by Thrawn, because throughout the trailer, we see that Thrawn already has a fleet. He already has, you know, his servants serving him. So unless Ezra escaped his clutches and, you know, ran off, I think that it's a good chance that he may be imprisoned by Thrawn. Like maybe Thrawn has him imprisoned somewhere and Sabine and Ahsoka have to break him out. Now, when I mentioned that the show was going to jump around in the timeline, I think that this is another example supporting that claim. So here we see Ahsoka fighting what appears to be an Inquisitor. You know, I know the scene plays out really fast, but you have to pause it to notice the dark side user in this scene is actually using an Inquisitor blade. This scene probably takes place during the reign of the Empire, like before Return of the Jedi, because after Return of the Jedi, obviously the Inquisitors were all dead, unless this is one that is alive and managed to, you know, not be detected. So that's one theory. There's also a theory that he's the 8th brother, but, you know, to my knowledge, the 8th brother was killed on Malachor or he escaped. The last thing we see before the final shot of Ahsoka in the trailer is the Jedi droid that previously appeared in an episode of the Clone Wars. In that episode, the droid had knowledge of all lightsaber designs. It's unclear if this scene is a flashback or it takes place in the present on the planet Lothal. I think that this is in the present, We may get some cameos from characters from The Mandalorian, including, Din Djarin and Grogu, maybe Bo-Katan due to her connection with Ahsoka. It's possible that there will be more crossovers between characters from The Mandalorian and the wider Star Wars universe within this web of like Filoni shows. So like, The Mandalorian, the Ahsoka show, Book of Boba Fett, and stuff like that. We had Zeb from Rebels appear in The Mandalorian in a few episodes back. As we get into this Heir to the Empire story, this big event, I think that we're going to have a crossover with all the major characters from each title. So like, again, Rebels, Ahsoka, Mando, and, I hope they can squeeze in Luke, Han, and Leia because, Heir to the Empire originally was still their story, So even though this is the canon version of Heir to the Empire, I would like to see some respects be paid from the old timeline, the previous timeline, by, showcasing Luke, Han, and Leia. And Luke has already been proven to work with deepfakes, so I think it would be obvious to bring Han and Leia back through the same technique. It'd just be really cool to see the original OT crew teaming up with this newer generation of characters to take down Thrawn. There's a couple more stuff in the trailer I didn't really cover, like Hera, for an example. I thought that it was pretty cool seeing her. Now, I don't mind the casting of Hera. I think that Mary Elizabeth Winstead looks good for Hera. She has a good voice, the mannerisms, just the overall visual look on top of being a good actress. But personally for me, I would have preferred if they cast Vanessa Marshall, just because like her voice is so iconic with that character, and it's really hard to hear another voice through the character, even though it's live action. You have Thrawn, who is played by Mads Mikkelsen, the voice actor for Thrawn in Rebels. So like, if we can get Thrawn being played by the voice actor, have him sound like his animated counterpart, why can't we have the same for Hera? But it's, I guess it's a little nitpick. It's more of like a preference, really. I had the same feeling towards Ahsoka. I would have preferred if Ashley Eckstein did the voice of Ahsoka while Rosario did the physical body movements, but that's just my opinion. There's honestly so much in this trailer I probably missed, so I'm going to watch it a couple times more. But if you spotted any other Easter eggs or references during the trailer that I didn't catch, just drop them below in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.